Good afternoon. Hi and welcome. I am Dەشنێ Jەlal. I am absolutely thrilled to be here today. I hope you're all ready and well for your second day of BIT Festival. Thank you all for being here. I am excited to be moderating one of the trending topics that are very familiar and very common among SMEs and startups in the region, which is the state of fintech in Iraq. With the innovation and the development in this area, there are a lot of excitement and a lot of controversy in this regard. Thank you all for being here. This is going to be a 50-minute panel discussion. Afterwards, we're going to have 15 minutes of Q&A from you guys. So get ready, ask your question, build your questions for our amazing panelists. I'm happy to be here with 4 amazing and high-caliber panelists who are experts and very knowledgeable and capable in this area. They will be sharing their knowledge in this area with you today. I would like to welcome Mr. Məhmud, who is an economist in the international development world. And we have Sەfin, who is the advisor, the senior advisor of the Deputy Prime Minister of the Kurdistan region. He's the senior advisor of reform and modernization. Very cool title. And we also have ڕەوەز, who is an angel investor and a partner at Euphrates Ventures. Someone we have a lot of questions for is diaکۆ Tahir. He is the area manager of FIB and FastPay. So welcome everybody. Before we start, the goal of this panel discussion is to give you an overview, a comprehensive overview of the Iraqi fintech landscape. What are the opportunities? What are the challenges in this landscape? And is the Iraqi economy and the state ready for all these innovation and advancement in this field? We will discuss regularity framework and policy consideration that is necessary to foster the fintech growth in the Iraqi economy. So before we dig into the questions, I would like to ask each one of our panelists to introduce themselves and give us a little bit of background of their professional background. Yeah, Mr. Məhmud, let's start with you.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity. I'm really excited to be here today. My name is Məhmud. I am a graduate of the American University of Iraq Suleimaniya, and I have an almost 10 years experience in international banking and international development. Unlike other speakers, I don't have a background in technology, but my background lies in the financial world and the international development. Thanks for having me here today.
Thank you, Məhmud. We also have Sەفین, غەفوور.
زۆر سپاس ئێوارە باشم لایەک سپاس بۆ هێرۆخان و برادران بۆ ئەم فێستیڤالە. من ناوم سەفینە، ڕاشکاری جەنابی جێگری سەرۆکی حکوومەتم بۆ کاروباری نوێکردنەوە و ریفۆرم. لە چەند ساڵی ڕابردوو وەشدار بووم لە چەند پرۆژەیەک لەوانە تۆماری بایۆمەتری، پرۆگرامی خزمەت، پێداچوونەوە بە داهاتی غەیرە نەوتی و ژمارەیەکی تر لەو پرۆژانە.
Thank you very much. بەخێر بێ Sەفین. And we have ڕەوەز.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's a hot day, but it's a beautiful place. So thank you, Hero Khan, Culture Factory, for making this happen. This is something different for Slemani, I think everyone can say. So I'm ڕەوەز. I'm a partner at Euphrates Ventures. Euphrates Ventures is a venture capital firm that invests in growing technology startups in Kurdistan region and Iraq. Our primary focus is on the technology scene, and by extension, that extends to listening to pitch decks from financial technology companies, etc. Apart from Euphrates Ventures, I've also, as you mentioned, I've done some angel investing. My father is here, so I have to mention that we have also family businesses in Kurdistan, which I'm very proud of in terms of insurance, real estate development, construction sector, and in the telecommunications sector. And I'm hoping that we can provide some insight to the awesome audience here so that we can be more useful to them.
We're very excited too. Thank you, Kak ڕەوەز. Kak Diaco.
سپاس دەشنێ خان، زۆر سپاس. من دیاکۆ حەمە تاهیر، دەرچووی زانکۆی ئەمریکی بەشی آیتی و پێشتریش پەیمانگای کۆمپیوتەر هەر هەماشەوە لە نێتوەرکینگ. باگراوندی ئیشکردنیشم لە فاسپەی و FIB چەند ساڵە زمانی کاری دیجیتال پیمنت و دیجیتال بانکینگ ئەند واڵێت شمان کردووە و ئێستاش شۆڕشێکی دیجیتاڵی لە بواری پیمنت و با ئەلکترۆنیکردنی مۆزوعی پیمنت لە کوردستان ئینشاءالله دەستمان ناوەتێ هیوادارین نەتیجەی هەبێ.
زۆر سپاس. So thank you, panelists, for giving us an introduction and telling us your background. So to dig into the questions, I would start with you, Kak ڕەوەز, you are someone who's highly involved with startups in Iraq, and you have first-hand experience with them. Would you be able to tell us how is it like? What is the startup landscape at the moment, and what are the trends that you have observed in the fintech sector in the recent years, and are there any specific fields and areas within the fintech that you think has potential or is growing within the Iraqi ecosystem?
Sure. So in terms of the startup landscape, I think most people don't realize how diverse it can be. So we have companies that are working in food delivery. We have companies that are working in prop tech, property technology, online car sales. We have companies that are working in connecting pharmacies together to their suppliers. We have e-commerce companies, and of course, with startups, there are companies that do, work on the vertical segments of e-commerce. So people that are only interested in selling beauty products, for example. So the ecosystem is, new. It's not very old, but it is growing. There are many people that are taking a very difficult and risky decision to start a company. Iraq remains one of the most difficult places on the planet to do business, so I commend them for willing to take that risk. And it's worth growing. It requires a lot of ecosystem support, which is something that I know you've done a lot of incredible work at it. But it also requires investors because, it's nice to be the only VC in town because everyone would like to talk to me, but it's not normal. This ecosystem, for it to grow, needs to have multiple investors, whether it's local, angel, or international or regional VCs. And I think, the quality of the companies that I see are not less than the quality of the companies that I've seen in Saudi, in Egypt, in Qatar. In fact, the market in Iraq is more appropriate for this type of technology, more than anywhere else in the region. If we're talking about fintech, I think specifically, I think we've had a good 2 decades of not really caring about the financial services in general in Iraq, if we're being fair. We have good banks. I think it's unfair to say that there is no banking sector. There are good banks that are backed by international investors. There are good banks that work, within the compliance rules, but they're really difficult to work with. And up until I think December, there was this market where it was faster, easier, and cheaper to work with the hawala market than to work with the banking sector. So a lot of the informal economy was working outside the financial system. I personally think that something big happened in December, and I think Diaکۆ alluded to it, that there was a big change in the outwards transfer market, and this has started the seeds of what could be a transformative experience for all of us, as consumers, as companies, as investors, to move towards digital payments, acceptance of it, whether we like it or not, because it now has become a necessity rather than a nicety. So I know a lot of the companies that I've come across did not want to deal with banks because they say, oh, but they ask for invoices and stamps and signatures, while I can just call up my friend in hawala market and he could do it more quickly. Well, now the bank is cheaper. It's not as fast, they're not as fast. I mean, that's, can be worked on. It's a transformation process. But the new framework that was put around it, I think, is very good in terms of allowing the next stage to happen. Now, how many fintech companies have I seen today? I don't think I have seen a lot, to be very frank. There are payment companies that are there. There are acquiring licenses that has been issued. There are banks. But if we're talking about purely fintech, especially people that tackle the more difficult part of fintech, which is the credit side, buy now, pay later, etc. I think apart from Zoodmall and a few others, there hasn't been much investment, or rather, there aren't many fintech companies that I see today. But I do think that this is the right time. There are a lot of startups that are just waiting for the payment system to develop a little bit so that they can transform their businesses into a fintech company. So, and I think that's something that I can feel can happen within the next 3 to 5 years.
That is very exciting, actually. It's very interesting to know that as somebody who's working the startup ecosystem and being highly involved in it, we do not see what's happening in the other countries in the region. But it is really good to hear that our startups are actually in the level of international or regional startups. Thank you, ڕەوەز. Sەfین, I would like to come to you with a question from your perspective and your area of expertise. What are the main obstacles and challenges faced by the fintech companies in Iraq, and how does the government address these challenges?
Yeah. Thank you very much. If we go back to, if you look at the data published by the Iraqi Central Bank, by CIB, we see that from 2007, the transactions, mobile payment transactions, went from 4 million USD to 80 million USD this year. That's as far as what's registered with them,
is, yeah.
Right? The number of wallets went from 200,000 wallets to 3 million. Of course, the data shows a progress, which is still, if you think about like $80 million plus minus, still compared to the total transactions on the Iraqi market is not that big, but it's growing. It's growing fast. It's growing very, very fast, as my colleague said, this year, especially 2023. I think the challenges are more in it's cultural, in the sense of trusting a bank. Probably there is a banking sector, but the banking sector should provide decent and normal daily services for customers, which are almost non-existent, or they come with a very high price. So how many of us trust the bank to put more than 10 million dinar there and let it sleep? I mean, most of the people would just use it for the transactions they need to buy an airline ticket, but they will not let the money in the bank for big sums. So, so the obstacle is the trust and culture, and the culture side is, I mean, to tackle it, it needs better products, more customer-centric services provided by the startups, by banks and other companies to help people more using it. If you had Lazo, for example, a couple of years ago, you had only one option to pay at the door. Now you can choose multiple payment gateways methods. So it's changing, and people see benefit of that. Exchanging or transferring money between wallets becoming much easier. So I think there are no regulatory or legal framework obstacles more than the culture. We need to get used to it.
True.
Yeah. And also we, at the same time as Kyrgyzstan regional government is soon we will, I mean, after the finalizing the digitized payroll system, we will be ready also to pay through or electronically through other banks. So there are will be more opportunities, especially next years, for the startup companies in fintech for Kurdistan region, and of course the rest of Iraq is already started this.
That is very good. Mr. Safin's answer brought me to a question to Diaکۆ. Diaکۆ, if you could tell us about FIB and how does it work and how can it be differentiated from traditional banks that we have in Iraq? And to answer Safin's question, how does it work with trust and the culture that we have?
First of all, if it's not bring me to the marketing company for FIB here, I want to introduce FIB at the line that you have. It's the first digital bank in Iraq, which is different from all of the other traditional banks. How it differs, it comes from the operation that it has in the daily works. For example, you can open your bank account instead of going to the actual bank branch and providing some hard copy documents. You can have it on your mobile phone and open your account during 5 minutes. It's the first step that we try to make it digital, and through this step you can find the other steps, the other features that we can make it digital. For example, transferring money from an account to the other, it's not digital in the traditional bank. You have to go to the actual bank branch to transfer it. You have to fill out a lot of papers and showing why you transferred that money from your account to the destination account. But in FIB, it's only 2 clicks. You click on the destination account number and then write the amount that you want to transfer. So this digitalization of the banking help us to make the use of bank easy for people. Instead of having one bank branch in Suleymania, we have a lot of the showrooms, you have a lot of cash points that provide FIB services for people. And in a different step that we did in FIB, till now we didn't see any bank, any traditional bank, to have branches in the, out of the 3 main provinces in Kurdistan, Erbil, Duhok, and Suleymania. Out of these 3 main provinces, we don't have bank branches in the small cities, in the rural areas. So as FIB, we have the showrooms with the help of FastPay company that provide the same service that we have in the bank to the people in the outside of the cities. And to answer the Sefin's question, you can say trust is something that we cannot build as FIB alone. It's belonging to the culture of like our country, our region, because we don't have a good history with the banks, especially at the time of ISIS, and the government took the money from the private banks, and the private sector of the banking was crushed, and there's no saving in that sector. So people, their right if they don't have trust in the bank system. So you have to make that trust gradually, not in one step or in one day. We cannot do it. We can say that the new rule of banking in Iraq helps us to do that. For example, the capital of the bank, when you establish a new bank, now changed in Iraq. Before, you have to have only 100 billion as like Iraqi dinar as a capital in the CBI. Now it's changed to like triple of that amount. So you have to have more than 250 billion as a capital. So it makes trust for the bank. Like you have 3 times bigger capital in the CBI. And I think the owner of the banks, the private bank especially, makes trust for people. Who is the owner of that bank, and what the previous background and working history of that owner, and when he works and where, and what the product that he had in the country. You can like decide if you have trust on that bank or not.
Thank you, Kag Diaco. Kag Mahmoud, we got the perspective of the government side and also private sector and someone who's involved in the startups. As someone who has been working in the international community and NGOs in developing the economy, as an economist, what do you see as the primary obstacle to accessing finance in Iraq and Kurdistan region, and how can fintech solutions contribute to overcoming these challenges?
Sure. To answer this question, I have identified 4 main challenges of access to finance in Iraq and the Kurdistan region of Iraq, and some solutions on the ways how fintech can help. So I will go through them one by one. The number 1 challenge that we have for access to finance is the limited banking infrastructure. And just to give you some numbers, the way it's measured is that how many bank branches do you have per 100,000 people? And here I have some data. The average of 46 countries, the average for 100,000 people was 60 commercial bank branches. And if we take Saudi, for example, they have 1,500 bank branches per 100,000 people. While in Iraq, we only have 4 banks for 100,000 people. So we are way, way behind in terms of infrastructure. And it's not just the number of the bank branches, but also the quality of the services that these banks provide. So the number 1 challenge is actually the infrastructure. And along with that is actually the high interest rates, collaterals, limited portfolios. We barely have 3 or 4 portfolios. And the processes. I personally used to work for Standard Chartered Bank a couple of years ago, and we had online platforms for people to create payments and for us to email the client for the supporting documents, and once we have the documents, we would process the payment. While still the banks here, they don't have the online platforms. You have to go to the branch like 100 years ago. So this is what we talk about in terms of lack of infrastructure, unfortunately. The second point, the second challenge for access to finance is actually the low financial literacy amongst the masses of people that we have. Again, we go to some numbers, and by the way, these numbers are coming from a source called Global Economy. It gives you the data and statistics of banking. The percentage of people with bank accounts of an average of 121 countries was actually 65%. And I'm taking Saudi as an example, as a neighboring country. The percentage in there is actually 74. So 74% out of 100% in that country owns a bank account. While in our country is only 1/5, it's 15%. So again, this is an indication of the lack of financial literacy. And again, because of the situation in Iraq over the past decades, there's an overall lack of mistrust in the banking system. This is also contributing to the financial illiteracy that we are talking about here. And still, most of the people in this place, they don't differentiate between the needs and the wants. So this is the basics of the financial literacy. The number one challenge is actually limited credit availability. We really have very limited amounts of credit available, especially for the SMEs. Today, everyone talks about SMEs. In some places, SMEs can actually hire up to 70% of the population, while in our country, the numbers are much, much lower. So if we talk about empowering the private sector and the SMEs, we really need to take a look at the amounts of the credits available for such SMEs. And again, there is very limited portfolios for SMEs. I have personally spoken to most of the banks that operate in this country, and they barely have one portfolio for SMEs, or they don't, because they find it too risky and that. And the final challenge for SME, for access to finance, as ڕەوەز was mentioning earlier, is actually the informal economy. The majority of the economic activities is being practiced outside of the formal economy. And just as he was saying earlier, you could just walk 10 minutes down the road and you go to the hawala market and then you use it and you never need a bank. I personally have very well-educated friends that run their businesses and they rely on the hawala market. It's very quick and it's really well trusted compared to the complicated bank processes that we have. So moving to the solutions that fintech can provide. Now we have highlighted the 4 major obstacles for access to finance. And excuse me if I'm taking long.
It's all right.
Number one solution that the fintech solution can provide is actually the mobile banking and digital payments. It gives an opportunity to individuals that never had access to the traditional banking system to have access to this alternative and use it to make their own transactions. And this will, and they also mentioned the statistics that are increasing of the usage of these online platforms. I don't have to cover that. And the second solution that the fintech can provide is actually the leverage of technology and data analysis to assess creditworthiness and provide loans. This is something that, excuse me. This is something that exists in other places, and there is billions of dollars in credit provided by the fintech companies as a solution to the traditional ways of providing loans through banks and other financial institutes. it can easily leverage the technology and analyze the data. And just to give you an example on that, if you want to get a bank loan today, you reach out to a bank, and that bank has to send a notification to the central bank if this person has received a bank loan from another bank. And that process itself, to make sure that this guy or this girl has not received a bank loan from another bank, would take at least a month. While if we have proper systems and fintech solutions, you can easily just look it up and get the proper answer. So these are areas that can actually, that fintech can help in solving. Another solution that fintech can provide is actually the areas of financial education and financial literacy. Fintech companies can actually provide user-friendly applications and online platforms that would allow even people with very limited amounts of education to be able to use these tools, and it can be very user-friendly. And to back up this is the number of the internet users that we have in Iraq that's growing over and over. And lastly, is actually the blockchain-based solutions, which can provide really transparent and secure financial transactions. One final comment in here. At the end of the day, collaboration is the key. We are talking about a very big challenge, access to finance. If you ask any young person that's running their company, the number one challenge that they are facing is access to finance. So for this situation, we need to collaborate, and this collaboration needs to be by the banks, by the fintech companies, and by the government. And I can assure you that these people don't like to talk to one another. So the key is the collaboration between these key factors, and I really think that venues like this actually provides the room for people of different backgrounds to have exchanges and hopefully come through some of these access to finance challenges.
Thank you, Kag Mahmoud. Thank you for all those interesting data and the solution that you provided to us. Going to what Kag Mahmoud said in regards to all these challenges for startups and SMEs to open a bank account or get a loan, I would like to ask Kag ڕەوەز two questions. One of them, if there are so many obstacles for a startup to get a loan or to just do a simple payment, what has been used until now? What methods? And second, given your experience in the and working in the Iraq's telecommunications center, how do you see the integration of fintech and mobile technology shaping the financial landscape in the country?
So, thanks for the question. That's an excellent question. I think the number one form of payment is cash. So I think today, if we're being realistic about it, around 99% of the transactions that happen today in volume today remain in cash. But it's changing. So you start somewhere. You start at 1%. Most entrepreneurs that I talk to have a payment problem, and it's twofold. One of them is the supply of the technology companies, the likes of FIB, etc. But the other problem, which is less talked about, is how much money is in those accounts. Because if you're going to charge, 50,000 dinars, if the money is not in the wallet, then the customer is not going to be able to settle that transaction at that moment. So, holistically speaking and realistically speaking, if you want to charge something like $5 or $5,000 for, I don't know, a car listing, then it's probably easier just to send that page or that app or that platform $5 of SSL credit or Cora credit or Zain credit. This is more practical. It's very basic, but it's ubiquitous. Everyone knows where to find an HSL card. Everyone knows where to find a Quora card. Everyone knows where to find a Zing card. From a customer's perspective, they know what they're going for. They know how to settle it. And that's the advice that I usually give to startups that are generally just targeting, like, just to start something simple, something dirty, something that works. Of course, as you grow and you develop, this solution is no longer sustainable. So, if you're doing a travel booking website, you better have debit card and credit card payment forms, because it's going to be $800, $900 for the transaction. The other part that I think a lot of people are missing is the importance of POS machines. And I think that's most businesses don't realize how expensive it is to have cash as an accepted form of payment. So, I mean, just to give you a very simple example, I mean, when you're accepting cash, if you have 5,000 in the stack and you exchange it to dollar, the exchange shop gives you a different rate than if you have that amount in digital. So that's basic cost. 2, you need to go there and take the money and deposit it, so it's a second cost. 3, you have 1,000 dinars in this country is horrendous, so they're all torn, they're not proper, etc. And 4 is all the processes that you have to work around it, just because you have to stick to cash. So my advice to the audience here is, if you know a coffee shop that you like, if you go to a hospital that you need to attend to, if you go to a hotel, and if you have a debit card from any bank, just tell them, can you take a digital form of payment? Because a lot of the times, people assume that, people have to be pushed by the government, but actually it's your clients that pushes you more than the government. The government can say whatever it likes, but if it doesn't do it itself, and it cannot force everyone. We don't have a dictatorship anymore. It cannot force businesses today, realistically, to have POS machines everywhere. But if the customers adopt it, and they ask for it, and they have money coming in through their own salaries, etc., then this ecosystem can really take a different form in a couple of years.
Very interesting. Thank you, Kak ڕەوەز. This will bring me to Kak Sەfین. I'll ask you 2 questions. We mentioned a lot of challenges, and we know that the private sector and international NGOs are trying hard to get there. As a senior advisor for reform and modernization of the Deputy Prime Minister, what are the key priorities and initiatives in leveraging technology to drive economic growth and development in Iraq? And do you think, should the private sector wait for the government to take action, or should they just take the initiative and wait for the government to follow?
So let me start by the second part of the question. I think we should take what the customer really needs. That's the basic list of innovation. Take, for example, all these web shops, semi-lookalike web shops exist on Instagram. Everybody's selling and buying stuff on Instagram. I mean, how do you categorize that? It's a shop, it's online, it's on a social media, right? You can't pay directly, there is no price. If you need the price of a product, you need to go send a direct message and wait for a reply, and then you're still not sure what kind of product you receive. There's no customer protection. So how would this is probably the biggest part of the current digital market, at least in Kurdistan and maybe in the entire Iraq. So how can you create trust, customer protection, and at the end of the day, the customers use these products, right? if the customer cannot use it, does not trust it, I mean, you can have a fantastic banking sector or solutions. If nobody wants it, it's useless. So, again, the customer centricity, to work on customer experience. Why, like, even digital banks not provide easy solutions for these type of businesses that operate on Facebook or on Instagram? Why not, let's say, startups go and approach these businesses to build a proper web shop for them? I mean, okay, you can also, as government, have have regulations of these type of businesses that operate online, but that will require, like, probably hundreds of millions of police to go and check and who is buying, who is selling on Instagram, who is not selling. So that brings you on a different topic, like the taxes, the type of taxes. Like there are no cash registers in the shop. So that brings you to the way we tax people. Is it based on an estimation or based on a real profit? So all these are not in isolation. It's all working together. They have effect on each other. We don't have, like, if you go to, let's say, in the entire Iraqi market, the way we do, like, direct tax, and there's no VAT, which means we don't tech funds or fintechs on shop level. There's no cash register, so I cannot even see how much profit the shop's making. That will probably, if that would be introduced, they will revolutionize the market, will introduce better and more solution. So regarding the first part, what we started now with let's start with the company registration process you have seen a couple of weeks ago. That's the way forward. It's a one-day process, and now a decree is issued by His Excellency Deputy Prime Minister. It will cost around 67,000 dinar, the entire process of a company registration, which is less than $50. The process itself, as I said, 24 hours. But there is the next part is to work on the licenses. Now we are working on the factory registration, the digitization, the transformation that started with all these services that have been digitized currently, and especially one of the most important one is the biometric registration. Now also everybody who is getting a trade name for a profession is registered at the biometric. So everybody will have soon a unique person number. We started with government wage earners, which is 1.2 something million. Then we extended it to driver's license, now to the professions and CEOs of the companies. Now, what will happen next? We have provided you with a UPN equivalent to Social Security number. All these transactions can be linked and interlinked by one unique number across the region. And that's also an opportunity for private sector startups to leverage that, to use that new technology. So a lot is happening this year in Iraq in general, and also in Kurdistan. Of course, there are obstacles, many obstacles. Maybe not directly, everything is related, but what we see is, like we said, we start from scratch, even from banking sector that didn't existed as vaults where people withdraw money. Now we are going to banking services. We didn't have it. So this is the difference between us and the neighboring countries, a post-social country been like this since 1920s. Baby steps, but we'll get there.
This is actually very exciting for us to see that the government is also taking initiative in the ecosystem. And as Queen, we had a lot of trouble with business registration for our startups, as it was too new for the government to really understand the registration process for them. So it is very good to hear that the new registration system is only taking 24 hours, and it is working with the startups to make their jobs a little bit easier in the Iraqi market. Diaco. So if we have a lot of startups in here, and most of them are eager to learn about the FIB. If, let's assume I have a startup and I want to open an account with FIB, but I'm not registered. I'm just selling, I'm an e-commerce, but I need to have a form of payment in my website. Would you be able to elaborate on how is the process working for me? What are the steps for me to take?
For these startups, I think we are the easiest bank or digital wallet than people can open, but it's not only from us. You know that per CBI regulation, we have to amend to their rules, to CBI rules, that no one can open a business account without the official document from the government. Okay, they have two different regulations for digital wallet and bank. For the bank, it's much more difficult to have your account. But for the digital wallet, it's a little bit easier. So we provide both of them. As FIB, we have a personal account they can use manually without integrating with their website, with their application. We have corporate account for the huge businesses, for the companies that registered in government. And in between of these two types of accounts, you have business account, which is different from all the other banks. We provided small business account, you can say. It's really for the startups. With only one paper, they can open business account and use it for their business and integrate with their application, with their websites, and use it manually as well. And also in the digital wallet company, which is Fastpay, they can have their merchant accounts with only single paper or any official document, even a license from the, I don't know, Asaish or the provenance. They can open the merchant account and integrate with their websites and work with it. And all of these services are for free. I mean, you cannot ask them for any charge for opening the account. And after that, for the transaction fees, as a help and support for the startups, we have the free fee for the startups for more than half a year or 3 months without any charge. They can get their payments for free. So it's a good support for the startups. And I have suggested yesterday, here and I think last year in the Tech Fest, it's not for just for FIB, it's for all the big companies that participate in such an event. They can, instead of paying some sponsorship like amount to the event manager, they can support some small startup businesses, small projects. Instead of paying, for example, $5,000 to the event manager, spend that amount in supporting the startups. Even if you don't have a fintech company, you are working in a different, like far sector, you can use your money to support the startups. So the startup can get their financial support, and they can get the solution as well in the fintech companies. So they can start, they can succeed.
Thank you.
And if you let me to answer some of the concerns about the POS card and the other services that we don't have it in the banking sector in Kurdistan, I want to explain that we as FIB, we provide one of the most advanced technology as a payment solution, which is more advanced than the card payment. It's QR code. You can pay through your mobile instead of having card in your wallet. Only through QR code you can pay. But our society is not acceptable to pay through mobile. It's not I can say it's not from the government, from the bank, or from the businesses. The whole society and the people that pay are not accepting paying through the QR code. It's not belonging to the government. It's not their fault to people cannot pay with QR code, with the card. A lot of shops, a lot of businesses have their POS to pay, but no one asks to pay through the POSs. Yeah. Go to the shops, they forget their password on the POSs. They forget their account password. They cannot open it. Even some of them just put it there. They cannot how to use it. They don't know how to use it. So now we are providing QR, we are providing POSs, we make the transaction fee for the POSs, we make it free for our cards. We are issuing card at the beginning for free for people, just for supporting people to have their card, to have to pay through the card, through the QR code. We have fully free payment method with the QR code. People not paying. It's not belonging to the government. It's not their fault. It's not our fault as a bank sector. It's not. I think it needs some revolution, starting from the education area, universities, schools, and the other sectors of education. They can start it because half of the community, half of the society consists of the universities and the education sector. So we have a new project for them, inshallah. We'll start and launch it soon, that we start building banking infrastructure from the universities and the education sector.
That brings us back to the fact that it is all about trust and culture in this country. And given the reality that our country has been through a lot in the past decades, it will take some time for the awareness to actually have an impact. We're very patient in that, and I hope that we will get there. And I think it is very, very essential for both sides of the market, the demand and the supply, to use e-wallets and banking and using other financial services. Thank you all panelists for your remarks. We're out of time, so we need to go to our Q&A. We're ready for the Q&A. Is there any questions?
No.
Kak Amanch.
دەستان خۆش بێ بۆ ئەو پانەڵە بەڕاستی زۆر سوودمەند بوو زانیارێکی زۆرمان گوێبیست بوو لەو برایانە. من سێ پرسیارم هەیە بە خێرا پرسیاریانەکە. یەکەمیان ئەوەیە فینتێک کەلیمێکی زۆر فراوانە، یعنی بۆ ئەو خەڵکانە کە زۆر شارەزانین کە دەتوانین بڵێن خەڵکێکی زۆرە، چۆن کاتەگرایزیەکە، یعنی چ نوع کۆمپانیایەک یا سەرویسێک یا بەرهەمێک ئەکەوێتە ناو فینتێک. ئەم پرسیار لە کاک دیاکۆ ئەەکەم، یعنی بۆ نمونە بینی پەیمنت گەیتوەی هەیە، P2B سەرویس هەیە، ئی-کۆمەرس هەیە، ئەمانە چۆن کاتەگرایزیەکەی بۆی خەڵک باشتر تێبگات؟ چونکە بە تایبەتی باسی ئەوە کرد کە ئێوەتانەوێت لە ڕێگەی ئەجوکیشن و یان لە ڕێگەی پەروەردەوە زیاتر خەڵک ئاشناکەن بە بانکینگ. پرسیاری دووەم بۆ کاک مەحمود، زۆر ینی سرنجڕاکێش بوو و بۆ هەر 100,000 کەسێک 60 برانچ هەیە. باشە، ئەمە بڵین ترادیشنەل بانکینگ، یعنی بانکینگی قەدیم ئاوا بووە، بەس بۆ پێش نەکەوین، بۆ ینی ئیسtismarکەین لە برانچە. ناتوانین ئێمە کە ئێڵێن لیپ فرۆگ، یعنی بڕۆین بۆ مەرحەلێکی دوای ئەوە کە ئەمە هەمووی بە ئەپلیکیشن نەکرێتەوە FIB ئەوە کە ئەوە چەند کۆمپانیایەکی کێشەی کات، چونکە کە تۆ برانچ دروستەکەی پارێکی زۆری تێچێ، کرێیە، کارەبایە ئاوە مۆزەفە ئەو هەموو شتانەیە لەوەکە ئەو پارەی لە شتێکی کە سەرکرێت ئاخر پرسیاریش بۆ کاک سەفین زۆر مهمە ئەو پرۆگرامانەکە هەتانە بۆ ڕێجستریشن بۆ لایسنسەکان بۆ تۆمانکردنی دەیتا و بۆ ئەوەی کە ئایدیەکە دەن بە هەموو کەسێک باسی سیقە زۆر کرا لێرەیە یەکی لە شتەکان کە زۆر ئەتوانین سوودمەند بین ینی لە ڕۆیەکی کەوە داتایەکی زۆر کۆ ئەکەنەوە حکومەت و ئەم داتایە ئایا هەموو کەسێ ئەتوانی ئەکسەسی بکە خۆ شەرت نییە شتە شەخصیەکانی خەڵک بڵێ بەڵام بۆ نمونە ئێوە یەک دنیا داتا کۆ ئەکەنەوە لەسەر ئیجازەی سایق یا لە لایسنسی کۆمپانیا ئەوانە ئەتوانین یعنی ئەمە ئەڤێڵەبڵ بیا یا ئەکسس بدەن بە ئام بۆ ئەوی خەڵک باشتر قەراردا لە ئینڤستمنت لە ستارتاپە و بۆ NGO-کانیش سپاس
دەستخۆش کاک ئامانج بڕۆینە لای کاک دیاکۆ یەکەم پرسیاری
کاک ئامانج فینتێک بۆ خۆی وەکو دەستەواژەکە کاکێ فاینانشال تەکنەلۆجی بڵێنەوە ئەگەڕێتەوە بۆ هەر ئەپلیکیشنێک یاخۆت پرۆگرامێک تەکنەلۆژیایەک کە لە بواری فاینانس سەرویس پرۆڤاید بکە پێم وایە ئێستا لە کوردستان کەمنەوە کۆمپانیایانی خۆیان لە چوارچێوەی ئەو دەستەواژێ ببینەوە ئەوەی هەیە کۆمپڵێک کۆمپانیای نوێ کە ڕێڵی بە دیجیتاڵی یاخود بە شێوەیەکی تەکنەلۆژی نوێ ئەتوانن پرۆڤایدی سرویسەکانی خۆیان بکەن بۆ بەکارهێنەرانی خۆیان لەوانەیە وەکو جەناب دامەژن کۆمەڵێک لەوانەی کە هەن جۆرێک لە جۆرەکان تەنها ڤیو یاخود بینینی سرویسەکە تەکنەلۆژی یاخود دیجیتاڵی بێ و باقی عملیەکان ئۆپەرێشنەکان کە ئەنجام ئەدرێت لە با بڵێن بزنسەکە یاخود مؤسسەکە دیجیتاڵ نین یاخود خۆی نابینێتەوە لە چوارچێوەی دەستەواژەی فینتێک بۆ یە کۆمپانیانی کە لێرە ئەتوانین کلاسیفایان کەین ئەوانن کە بەڕێگەیەکی تەکنەلۆژی نوێ کە ئاسان بتوانین دەستەبەر بکرێت کۆمەڵێک سرویس یاخود خزمەتگوزاری دارایی بەردەست دەخەن بۆ بەکارهێنەرانی خۆیان بە سادەترین شێوە و پێشم وایە لە ئێستەیە جۆرێک لە جۆرەکان ئاسانکاری و هاوکاری هەیە بۆ هەر کۆمپانیایەک هەر جهەتێک ئەگەر بیەوێ داخلی ئەو بازنەیە بێ و بتوانێ وەکو هەر کۆمپانیایە کە ئێستا مۆجودە دەستێک بێ بۆ هاوکاریکردنی ستارتەپەکان خەڵک مەسئلەی دیجیتاڵ پەیمنت کە ئێستا بە هەمومان هەوڵەین لە کوردستان جێگەی بکەینەوە خەڵک ڕابێنین لەسەرەوەی کە بەکاری بێنێ و حکوومەتیش بۆ خۆی لە هەوڵی ئەوایە زۆرترین کۆمپانیا زۆرترین جهت بێنێتە ناو ئەو بازنەیەوە منافەسەی ئەو بازاڕە کە هەیە گەورەتر بێ و زۆرترین سرویس و بە هەرزانترین نرخ و باشترین شێواز بگاتە دەستی بەکارهێنەرەکانی خۆی بۆ لەوانەیە لەم لاولە کۆمەڵێک لە کۆمپانیای جیاواز لە پرۆڤایدەری سرویسی فاینانشال کە چێتەوە قاڵبی فینتێکەوە دەربکەون بەڵام لە کۆتاییە ئەوانەی کە بە شێواز ئەکادیمیەکە لە فینتێک جیانە بێتەوە ئەوانن کە فۆڵی دیجیتاڵ یاخود تەکنۆلۆجیکەڵ سرویس پرۆڤاید دەکەن و لە کۆتایە لە چوارچێوەی دەستەواژەکە خۆیانە بیننەوە
دەستخۆش کاک دیاکۆ کاک مەحمود پرسیاری دووهەم لەسەر ئەوە بوو بۆچی ئێمە نەڕۆینە مەرحەلەی دوایەوە باسی چەند داتایەکە کرد لەسەرەوەی بەپێی ژمارەی کەسەکان برانچەکان زۆرە چۆن بتوانین وەکو عێراق وەکو کوردستان مەرحەلەیەک لە دوای ئەوە دەست پێ بکەین
کاگامان جۆڵا منیش حەزمە کرد ڕێگەکانەوە کورت وایە یەکسەر بڕۆشی نایەتەوە قۆناغەوە بەڵام ئەوانەی کە لەگەڵ ئەو کۆمپانیانەی لەو بوارانە ئیشەکەن ئەوان زیاتر گرنگیان بە پەرەپێدانی لایەنی تەکنەلۆژیەکە بەڵام لەمان کاتا پێویستیان بەوە هەیە کە دامەزراوەیەکی دارایی هەبێت لە پشتیانەوە کە پاڵپشتی لایەنە داراییەکانیان بکات لەبەرەوە تەنانە دەگەر ئێمە کۆمپانیایەکی وەکو ئاسیا حەواڵە و فاسپەی وانەمان هەبێ لە ئاخیری ڕۆژەکە هەر پێویستیان بەوە هەیە کە بانقێکە بێ پاڵپشتی ئەوان کات چونکە ئەو کەسەی کە بازرگانەوە حسابێکی هەیە دەڕێکەی حسابەکەی وەشت دەفرۆشێ داخلی ڕۆژەکە هەر پێویستی بە بانکەکە بێ ڕەن بێکم ئێمە پێویستمان بەوە نەبێ لە داهاتووە 1500 فەرعی بانکمان نەبێ بۆ 100,000 کەس بەڵام ئەوەیە کە ژێرخانەکەمان لە ئێستا ژێرخانێکی زۆر زۆر لاوازیانی بەڕاستی ئەمە پێویستمان بە بانکی بە دامەزراوەی دارایی زۆر زۆر زیاترە بۆی بتوانێت هاوکاری ئەو کۆمپانیا تەکنەلۆجیانە بکاکە لە بواری فینتێکا کارەکەن.
دەستخۆش کاک مەحمود. کاک سەفین، کاکەمانش پرسیاری ئەوەی کرد کە زۆرێک لە داتا کۆکرێتەوە لە زۆربەی پرۆسیسەکانی حکوومەتە. ئەم داتانە ئایا بەردەستە بۆ ئەو کەسانی بزنسیان هەیە بۆ هاوڵاتیان بەعام؟
بەڵێ دوو ئێمە پرۆسی لەبەر داتایەکەمان زۆربەی زۆری تا ئێستا لەسەر کاغەز بووە. ئەگەر لە هەندێک شوێن هەش بوو بێت هەر کەسە و لای خۆی بە ئەکسس پرۆگرامێک بە تۆزە شتێک لە بە کۆمپیوتەر داخلی کردووە بەڵام داتاکەی کە هەیە هی ئەوە نییە بۆ ئامار بەکاربێت. ئێمە دەستەی ئامارمان هەیە داتای باشیان هەیە KRSO و داتایان لایە بەڵام داتاکە گشتگیر نییە. لە ئێستادا لەبەر ئەوەی ئێمە دووشت پیادەکەین لە مەودووە. یەکێکیان unique person number ژمارەی کەسی بێ هاوتا هەموو کەسێک لە هەرێمی کوردستان پێویستە ژمارەی کەسی بێ هاوتای هەبێت ئەمە وەکو social security number وە بۆ کۆمپانیا و پیشە و کارگە و ئەم جۆرانە شتێکی ترمان هەیە بۆ کەسی معنەوی کە پێڵێن unique entity number یعنی لەمە دووار لە هەرێمی کوردستانە یا ئەبێ UPN هەبێ یان UEN هەبێت ئەگەر ناتوانیت هیچ مامەڵەیەک ئەنجام بدەیت. ئەم داتایەکی زۆری لۆکێوێتەوە کێشەکە لەوەیە پرایڤسی زۆربەی ئەو داتای خاستن ئەوەی ئەبەسترێتەوە بە بابەتی UPN ئەبێ دەستگایەک بێت ناوەکان بسڕێتەوە اینجا هەر شتێکی تر پەیوەندی بە کەسەکەەوە بیسڕیتەوە اینجا بکرێت شیاوی ئەوە بێت بڵاو بکرێتەوە. بەڵام لەگەڵ ئەوەشدا داتایەکی زۆر هەیە کە زۆر گرنگە بۆنمە ئەم ساڵ ژمارەی بەشداربووی هێڵی کارەبای نیشتیمانی چەند کەس بووە لە سنوورێکی دیاریکراوە بۆی بزانی گەشەی ئابووری چۆن ئەم داتایە ئەکرێت بەردەست بێ بەڵام بەداخەوە زۆربەی ئەو خزمەت گوزاریانە تا ئێستا تەنها لەسەر وەرەقەن بۆیە بۆ خۆشم ئەگەر داوای ئەو داتایە بکەم ئەڵێ لە کەلار ئەم ساڵ ئەوە نەخانووە بەشدار بووە لە تۆڕی ئاو یا کارەبا هیچ ئەوەیەکی تیان نییە ینی بڵێم قەبارەیان چەند بووە ینی تێچوەکەی چەند بووە یا بڵێ لۆکیشنەکەی چی بووە بەڵام ئەمە گۆڕانکاری بەسەردادێت بۆیە وەڵامەکە بەڵێ و نەخێرە ئیتر
دەستان خۆش بێ سپاس بە وەڵامەکانتان. سپاس کاگەمانچ. کەسی تر هەیە پرسیاری هەبێ؟ Is there anybody else؟ ئەم بەڕێزە لێرەوە.
ئەو کاتان باشت دەستان خۆش بێ. من 2 ساڵ و نیوە بانک بەکارێنم 2 ئەکاونتمەیە ئەوەی کە لە حەزم کردووە ئەم خاڵانەی خوارەوەیە یەکەم بەتاوتیوانی کە ئەکاونتی بانکەکانی عێراقیانەیە کێشەمان هەیە لەگەڵەوەی کە تەلەفۆنەکەی بۆ کۆڵ سنتەرەکان یان زانیاری نییە یان بە زمانی عەرەبی جواب دادەوە من خۆم چەند جای پەیوەندی بە FIB کردووە 2-3 جار پاری زۆرم ڕۆشتووە لە ترانزاکشنە 50,000 100,000 کە نردومە بۆ هین کارە نەبووە بۆ دەرەوە نردووە نەمزانێت یان بۆ باقێکی خۆم نردووە لە عێراق ئەوش هەر دیسان پارێکی زۆر ڕۆشتووە بەڵام پێیان نەوتوم کێشەی بانکە لە عێراقەوەیە پێ ناڵێت تۆکو کەستەمەرێک ترانزاکشن فی چییە ئەوە بکەی ئەو نتەڕە ئەو ینی ئەو ئینفۆرمێشنان نایەتێ. ئۆکەی شتێک تر هەیە لە عێراقای بینم برادەرەکانم لە بەغاوانە کە حساباکانەیە ئەمڕۆ لە بانکی NBI هەیەی سبێنێکی بۆ FIB بۆ ئەم لۆنێکی هاتێ قەرزێکی هاتێ بەڵام نامێنێت بۆ چەند کەسێکە پێشتر ئۆفکۆرس ینی با بڵێن ئیمپلۆیەکە کۆنێکشنی هەبوو تا ئێستاش هەیە هەندێک بانقێم برادرم لە ئیشەکە لە ڕێی کۆنێکشنی خۆیەوە قارزیان هەندێک ئیش بۆ هەندێک کەسی تایبەتەکە سپێشڵ کەستەمەرز ڕۆشنبیری کارمەندی بانک زۆر گرنگە کە ئەچیت زۆر خۆتان نەزان هەیە زۆر بێئەدەب لەگەڵ تا لەگەڵ ئەسماڵ بۆ وشەیە جواب تاعته بروبكا يعني لما تشين بو تي بي اي يعني برو بركي عرب وهرب زوي كهكا برون من بوتا هناك مو يعني enough is enough اوكي كاك سفين عفو اما بونو يسا او بابلين او كاكي واسا بشتكا لازم بابلين digital directorate something like this about the social security number
بله
بونو مونا اما خدان زاني الاستا اما دو زون مالها يعني او information يعني كونو individual like كتو social بابلين security number بود هناك اشي تجرسي تشيوا وانيا توزك او بكارديت بو ماركتينج اند ادفرتايزمنت الفيوتشر بونو من ايا لولا اواني كسبر شو دايره كان لو انا زو بسبب بارتي ديك راوبن بونو من ايا دزغاي كي هول قري حزبي ناتو انا امزاني انا بكار بينه ابو برا برسال بلا من ديك مش طبعا بو ويك بونو تاكلي someone or terminate someone اوزو ميما وبزار اكيد توزك دوات مدرسي هي بو اندشر وزوس واس
دەست خۆش کاک سەفین ئەگە بتوانیت
لە هەموو پرسیارەکان بەسی منتان هەڵبژار من ئەم بابەتی تاوان فەرمانگەی تەکنەلۆجیای زانیاری داتا سنتەرەکە لەوەیە ئێمە هەموو ئەو لایەنانەی کە سەرپشکن لەمە تاوان بابەتی پرۆگرامی بایۆمەتری جەنابی کاکوبات سەرپەرشتیاری پرۆگرامەکەی لیژنەی باڵای بایۆمەتری ئێمە بە هیچ شێوەیەک جیاوازی نەکراوە بڵێ ئەمە لە سنوورێک بێت و لە سنوورێک نەبێت لە داتە سنتەری حکوومەتە زۆر ئێمە دڵنیاین لە پرایڤسی و پارێزبەندی لە سنووری فەرمانگەی تەکنەلۆجیای زانیاریە و ئەو داتایش کە وەکو بۆ کاکامان شموتەم ئەو داتایی کە پەیوەندی بە کەسەوە هەیە بە هیچ شێوەیەک بڵاو ناکرێتەوە چکە پەیوەندی بە کەسەکەەوە هەیە بۆ هیچ مەرامێکی تر سوودی نییە یعنی ئەوە نەیە بزانی لە کوردستانە ونمونە چەندی تەمەنیان لە چ ساڵ تەمەنیان چەنە یا بزانی ناویان چییە زۆربەی ناو لە هەرێمی کوردستان ئەمەیە یعنی داتاکەی ئەوەی تریان پرۆفایلی بایۆمەتری شەخصە ینی گلێنەی چاو و پەنجەمۆرە ئەمە لەوانەیە موشکیلە بێ ئەگەر بدەزرێت بەڵام بە دڵنیاییەوە هەموو لایەنێکی سکیوریتی ئەم بابەتە پارێزراوە و یەکێکە بەپێی هەموو ستانداردەکانی جیهان لەم بوارەوە ئیشەکات من دڵنیام یعنی هیچ کێشەیەک نابێت لەمەیە و هەموو کەسێکیشی تایە هەموو موچەخۆرێکی هەرێمی کوردستانی تایە بێ جیاوازی و هەموو ئەو کەسانەی کۆمپانیا و پیشەوە دەگرن لە هەرێمی کوردستان بێ جیاوازی تایەتی مننی تەسەوڕ ناکەم هیچ کێشەیەک هەبێت
دەست خۆش کاک سەفین کاک ڕەوەز
عفو بەس چکە بۆی ئفایبی خۆی جواب نایەتەوە زۆری هجووم کردە سەریان فەقیرە ئێمە بەڕاستی ینی هەندێک شت هەیە بێ شڵی لایەنێکی بانکەکانیش بگرین لەم بابەتە ینی تەعامل نەکردنی خەڵک بە شێوەیەکی گشتی لەگەڵ منزومی مالیە با بڵێین کە ئەو ژمارەیەکی کەم کارمەندی هەیە یا ترینینگی کەم پیاوان لەبەرەوەی کە پێویستی پێ نییە لە ناحەیە واقعەکە ئەمێ ینی تۆ بزنسێک خۆی ئەگەر لە هەفتەیەکە سێ کەستی بۆ بچێ خۆ دەگەر ئیشێکت هەبێت دڵنیام وا ئیژەکە ینی کارمەندەکە گرنگ نییە بەلاتەوە زۆر دوو کەستەمەریەت بۆ لای دانیشی ئەم مۆزەفەی خۆت بە شێوێکی باش فێرکەی بەڵام ئێمە ینی لە تەجروبەوە مەسەن لە ئیتصالاتی هەمان شێوە بوو ینی لە بیدایە تا کۆڵسەنتەر کێشەی تیا بوو موشکیلە هەبوو هەمان جەرنی هەبوو کە ئێستا بانقەکان پێداڕۆن با بڵێین بەڵام ئەمە لەگەڵ دروستبوونی ڤۆلیۆما و کێشانە هەلە بێ خۆی ئێمە بێ دوو سەرنجی جوانتدا کە بەڕاستی منیش هاوڕام لەگەڵانە کە یەکەمیانەوەی ترانسپەرەنسی بۆ ترانزاکشن کەمە خاستم پێش ڕوودانی عملەکە دوای ڕوودانی عملەکە و کەسێک زانێ دوای $50 لێ ڕۆشتووە یا 5,000 لێ ڕۆشتووە شەڕی چێکی بەڵام پێش ڕوودانی عملەکە بەڕاستیەوە هێنا و دومینیشان کەمە ئێمە لە ئیتصالاتی شامان کێشە بوو لە مەرحەلەیەکە کە ئەوەی ئینتەرکۆنێکشنی بینی بانکەکان خۆیان زۆر زەعیفە و بەداخەوە کێشەکەی کێشەیەکی تەکنۆلۆژی و ئینفراستراکچەر نییە هەموو بانک ئەکاونتێکی عێراق ئایبانی هەیە هیچ بانک ئەکاونتێک نییە لە عێراقا لە نەتیجەیە ئایبانێک نەبێ یونیک نمبەرێک نەبێ کە پەیوەندی پێوە کراوە بەڵام بە بۆنی کەمی ڤۆلیومی کارەکەەوە بە بۆنی نەبوونی باڵێن هێزێک لەلایەن بانقی مرکزیەوە یان ئەمانەوە تعاملی بینی بانکەکان خۆیان کزە و ئینتەرکۆنێکشن لە بینیان ناکەمە کاکسەفین نقطەیەکی زۆر زۆر گرنگی باس کرد کە حەزم کرد سەرنجێک لەسەر و بابەتەش بم کە بابەتی متمانە بە هەموو سەکتەری بانکیە بەگشتی کە لەم بابەتەیە بەڕاستی دووشت زۆر زۆر ئەساسین یەکەمینیان ترانسپەرنسیە لە فاینانشەل ستیتمنتە کە ئەبێ بانکەکان هەمویان بەبێ جیاوازی ئەبێ حساباتی ختامیان لە شوێنێکی معتەبەر زۆربەی زۆری بانکەکان خۆشحاڵم کە لە سوقی ئەوراقی مالی عێراقا هەیەە فاینانشەل ستیتمنتیان بڵاوەکەنەوە کوارتەرلی بڵاوەکەنەوە کە ئەمە زۆر زۆر گرنگە لە ناحیەی باڵانس شیت ئینکەم ستیتمنت کاش فلۆ کە ئەمە ئیندیکیتەرێکی باشە بەشێک لە ترانسپەرنسیەیە بەڵام لە ترانسپەرنسی گرنگتر کەەوەی کە دیاکۆ بە شتێکی باشی باس کرد دەست من نەتوانم لە خراپەکەشی باسکەم کە ئەوەیە خاوەن بانکەکانن کە ئێمە چەندەها بانکمان دیوە بە بۆنی خاوەنەکانەوە کە قەرزیان لە بانکەکانی خۆیان کردووە بە بۆنیەوە توانیوانە کێشەی زۆر گەورە دروستکەن بۆ بانکەکان و بۆ شاری سلێمانی بۆ چەندەها بانکی تر کە ئەمەش پێویستی بەڕاستی بە دیسکلۆژەرە ینی بانک بۆی نییە قەرزدا بە خاوەن بانکەکە ئەمە قانونەکانی بانکی مرکزی زۆر زۆر ڕازەحە وە گەربیشیدا ڕۆڵ و ڕێگلیشتنی خۆی هەیە کە چی ئەبێ ڕوودا جیهاتی ڕقابی زیاتر پێویستە لەو بابەتە بکۆڵنەوە کە نێڵن خاوەن بانکەکان ئەوەی کە پێڵەن ریلیتد پارتی ترانزاکشن یعنی ئەو معاملات لەگەڵ ئەطرافی کە پەیوەندی بەخۆیانەوە هەیە شتێ بکەن کە لە نەتیجە بێ بە زەرەر بۆ هەموو منزومی مالی چکە لە نەتیجە کە بانکەکەکەوێ تەنها یەک بانک ناکەوێت متمانەیە بە هەموو سیستمی بانکیە کە ئەکەوێت لەگەڵە بۆیە زۆر زۆر گرنگەوە لەلایەنی بزنسەکانەوە بێ بانکەکان خۆیانەوە بێ لەلایەنی ئەوانەی کە لە بەجای ڕێفۆرما ئیشەکەن کە زۆر زۆر گرنگی بۆ بابەتە بدەن کە بابەتی پێڵن دیسکلۆژەری میجر شێر هۆڵدەرەکان کە نەتوانن دەست بەر بۆ پارەی خاوەن پارەکان و دەریکەن بۆی لەبەرەکە خۆیان پرۆژەیەکیان هەیە و حەزیان لێ
دەست خۆش کاک ڕۆز کاتمان زۆر نەماوە کاک دیاکۆ گەر
حقی خۆمە دیفاع لە خۆمەکەم یعنی دەست هەواجبم لەسەرە لە کۆتاییەوە دەست پێ بکەمەوە کاک ڕۆز باسی بکن کە باسی با بڵێن خاوەنی بانک یا ئەو کەسێک کە خاوەندارەتی منزومەکە مەسەکەکە مانای وان نییە لەبەرەوەی سیقەمان بە با بڵێن خاوەنەکەیە سقەمان بە بانکەکە بێ نا بەڵام ئەکرێ بە مێژووی ئیشکردنی خاوەنی مؤسسەکە بڕۆینەوە و ببینین پێشینەی چی هەیە و لە دوای ئەوەش بەڕاستی چ بزنسێکی تر خاوەندارەتی ئەەکە کاتێک تۆ خاوەندارەتی بانکەکەیت و چەند بزنسیکە بە دوای بانکەکە خاوەندارەتێکی بێگومان پارەی بانکەکەی و پارەی خەڵکە بەکارهێنی و خۆشبەختانە ئێستا لە بانکی مرکزی ئەو قانونە گۆڕاوە خاوەندار یاخود ئەوەی کە خاوەنی بانکەکەی ناتوانێ ڕەسمالی بانکەکە بەکاربێنە جارێکی تر لە پرۆژەیەکی تر دەستکاریکردنی ڕەسمال ئێستا هێڵی سوورە لای بانکی مرکزی و پێشتر ڕێگە پێدراوە بوو تا حەدێک پێش 2008 و 2007 ئەوانە بەنەوەیەک لەوەکان لە ڕێگە هەندێک ڕێگەەوە توانی ڕەسمالی خۆت کە داد نابوو لە بانکی مرکزی بەکاری بێتەوە تەمان بانکی مرکزی عێراقی باسەکەم بۆ ئێستش ئەگەر ئیشارەتێک بە تێبینەکانی کاکەش بەم ڕاستی بەشێکی ئەو ئیشکالاتە دووشتە یەکیان بانکی مرکزیە مۆزوعی ترانسپارنسی لە ترانزەکشنەکان فی و ئەوانە ڕۆژ بە ڕۆژ لەگەڵ سەری دۆلار و لەگەڵ میزاجی بەڕاستی بانکی مرکزی سیاستی بانکی مرکزی ئەگۆڕێ یعنی تۆش ناکرێت لە ئەپلیکیشنەکەت هەموو ڕۆژێک ئەپدەیتێکی تازە و ڕیزێکی تازە بنیری تۆ خەڵک ئەپدەیتی بکە ئەو مشکلێکە ناتوانین بەڕاستی مۆزوعی فیەکان و هەموو ترانزاکشنێک و بخۆی پیشان بن کە چییە زۆر کات درەنگ ئەپدەیتە بێ لە باک ئێند جێبەجێ کرێ با بڵین فیەکە بەڵام ناتوانین ئەپدەیتی بکەین و پیشانی ئەوەی بین مۆزوعی کەستمەر سێرڤیس بەس TBI نییە بەس FIB نییە بەس فاسپەی نییە بەس فلان و فیسار کۆمپانیا نییە پێم وایە مشکلەی با بڵین کەستمەر سێرڤیس لە کوردستان مشکلەیەکی عامە بەشی زۆری کۆمپانیەکان هەمان مشکلیان هەیە چونکە تا ئێستش لە هیچ ناوەندێکی ئەکادیمی لە کوردستان مۆزوعی کەستمەر سێڤیس لەو هەموو کۆلێژێک کە باسی بزنس و نازم مانجمنت و ئەدمینستریشن و ئەوانە دنیایەک قسم ئەومان هەیە هیچ قسمێکمان نییە باسی کەستمەر سێڤیس کا بەڕاستی یعنی ئێمە ئێستا ئەو کادرانی کە هەمانن لە کۆمپانیەکانی تریش لەیان هەروایە 2 ساڵیوێت تا دروستی یەکەین چۆن کەستمەر سێڤیس بکە و کە دروستی شەبێ بەڕاستی جێت هێڵێ ڕایە تۆ بەردەوام بکاتە دروستکەیتەوە ئەگەر لە ناوەندا ئەکادیمیەکان کەستمەر سێڤیس ئەوە دروست بکرێ ئێمە لەوانێت کێشەیەمان نەبێ بەڕاستی
دەستە خۆش بێ کاک دیاکۆ دەستان خۆش بێ و زۆر زۆر سپاس بۆ ئامادەبوونتان سپاس کاک مەحمود کاک سەفین کاک ڕەوان کاک دیاکۆ زۆر زۆر سپاس بۆ ئامادەبوونتان سپاس بۆ ئەو زانیاریانەی کە پێتان بەخشین ئەمڕۆ سپاس بۆ ئامادەبوونتان و سپاس بۆ پرسیارەکانتان و ڕۆژێکی خۆش
سپاس بۆ ئێوە